Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Beginner to Master Speedrun. This is going to be episode number 73, and I'm coming into today rated 2251. And yeah, what more to say? Happy November. It's hoodie season. It's hot tea season. Have a nice cup of double matcha green tea, whatever double matcha means. And yeah, let's waste no more time. Let's hop into the first game. Okay, first opponent playing Mackle something something. And let's play c5. Opponent's rated 2285 from the Netherlands. I'm going to play e6. I think the last couple episodes I've been playing Taimanov Sicilian. And this is one of my favorite weapons from the black side. There are a lot of different things white can play. We see knight b5. I actually encountered this opening last episode. My opponent had played bishop to f4. This time we see c4, which I think is slightly more standard. White is aiming to get the Marazzi bind set up. And I'm going to go for a more solid approach. I still want to play quickly, but the plan is to employ a hedgehog setup with queen c7, b6, bishop b7. I have played this a decent amount before, and usually leads to positions where both sides are very, very solid. White will have a bit more space going into the middle game, but the goal is just to get my minor pieces to good squares, and then hopefully have a fight. I think rook c1 is probably the standard move here. And actually with rook c1, white would be threatening knight d5, but we don't see it right away. And this is still playable. There are some common themes with X-ray vision on the c-file. And yeah, for rook c1, knight d5 takes is usually a good transformation for white. So I'm going to play knight e5. Just making sure that this doesn't work because then I take and I win a piece. And the plan is actually to eventually play knight e to d7. And the knight's just a little bit better placed on d7, not blocking the bishop, not blocking the c-file. I might be threatening to take on c4. White's kind of baiting me. I mean, takes, there's knight d5, hitting the queen and bishop. So, okay, let's not get baited. Maybe rook e8. Rook e8 is a move that is usually played in these positions. For many years, I used to like to put my rooks on d8 and c8, which might seem a bit more natural. But the rook on e8 does support the bishop, and there's cases much later on where if black plays d5 and there's a trade of e-pawns, then e-file can be very useful for the rook. There's another case where if I end up playing this move, the queen will go to b8, and my bishop can use a d8 square to eventually maneuver to c7 and create the battery. Let's go for this. So this isn't specific preparation, but I mean, all the moves I've played so far have been kind of my general plan in this sort of opening. And there are a lot of different ways the position can branch out. White has a good number of options, like rook d1, king h1, some waiting games, sometimes a4, bishop f2. But I like my time situation. Feels like there haven't been too many games recently in the speedrun where I'm up on time from early on. And sometimes that's a result of me taking too much time early on explaining my moves. Opponent doesn't have the best connection. High lag, king h1 is played. Not sure if this is necessary. I think it's still a useful move though. And don't want to burn too much time there. I'm leaving b6 undefended, but yeah, in many cases the bishop comes to defend the pawn. And in some cases the knight also comes to defend the pawn. So white is taking time. Yeah, white's position looks very harmonious. And I've played similar positions as white, and sometimes the issue is just not knowing what the plan is in the middle game. Like if white tries to expand with f4, then it leaves e4 as a target. And yeah, f4, I'd probably retreat and then look to place knight on c5, maybe even queen a8. Another benefit with having my queen kind of tucked away here can create the battery with light squared bishop, of course, a black squared bishop as well. You see pawn g4. So white maybe trying to create some kingside attack. Yeah, definitely have to be careful because in g5, the knight doesn't have too many attractive options. So let's say I start with bishop d8. g5, I guess knight h5, f4 hits both knights. So bishop d8, g5, knight fd7, f4. This is a little bit unpleasant. I'm wondering about d5 here, just to try and blow open the center. There is x-ray vision against the king. Should also be considering like takes, takes, takes. Sack a piece for 2 pawns. Don't think that works though. There's also a thematic idea b5 takes and then d5. But that might be sacrificing a bit too much. There's also ideas like b5 takes and then sack the rook, sack the knight. I can't go too crazy. Yeah, g5 is slightly annoying. I have knight g6. Actually, in the line here, f4, knight g6. I guess f5 might come. Okay, so let's say d5. Oh, d5, g5 still. What about h6? And then g5, I just take. Eventually put the knight on g6. Might be weakening. I'm kind of leaning towards this move, just to start with. And then if f4, I can choose between knight g6 or knight c6. I could also play queen a8, some prophylaxis. Because then it's much harder for white to get in f4. Okay, I'm going to play queen a8. Honestly, this move did not come to mind until maybe like 20 seconds ago. Until I mentioned it, basically. But I think it's a nice improving move, and it just puts the ball back in white's court. And white, I mean, if white wants to expand, it's very committal. Especially like g5, f4, the pawns can't move backwards. And with the queen bishop battery, then d5, I think will be better prepared. And I considered this, knight h5, f4, I take, king g1. Both knights are still hanging. I think it's better just to move this way. I mean, f4 is still a line to calculate. But then I take with check. Take. Bishop f3 can't really be played because I take. So f4, let's say we trade everything on e4 and then king g1. And where does my knight go? There might be an issue, like if my knight moves, there's bishop f3, trapping my queen. And if somehow that works for white, then after f4, I might not be able to take on e4. takes. King g1, knight c6. Bishop f3 skewers my queen and knight. White plays it. Yeah, I think this is poisonous. I think I'm just probably better off moving the knight to c6. And there's also this idea as well, knight g6. Actually, knight g6 might have more usefulness to it. Am I scared of f5? Probably not, because takes, and then eventually e4 is loose. And I think there's a very clear purpose of why my knight belongs here rather than here, is if white plays a natural move bishop f3, I have knight h4. And that's a really nice way to disturb the bishop. And meanwhile, yeah, I still have pressure against the pawn. Pawn is pinned. Knight c5 is looming. Then I have 3 attackers. Bishop d3. So I think it's just knight c5. Play this quickly. We're both below 5 minutes. And these pawns look scary, but with the pawns advanced and white's king on h1, it could be white's king who's less safe. Got the sniper battery. Should also keep in mind this resource d5 or b5, thematic pawn breaks. I'm not sure what white's going to play here. There's 3 attackers, maybe queen g2 or queen c2. Queen g2, maybe still knight h4. If queen c2... Wow, so white's allowing a capture. I guess b6 is hanging, but should be a trade I'll be very happy to make. Looks like we'll trade some pieces on e4. Knight h4 is definitely still a resource. Knight will almost certainly be pinned on the diagonal. So white could win back the pawn. Although if bishop takes b6, I win f4. So it looks like I'll just be up a pawn in great position too. My hedgehog structure is still intact. White's just giving me a free pawn here. Looks like it. There's no great way for white to attack the queen. Like white could offer a queen trade, but then I'm happy to trade down. Up now 2 pawns. And if queen e2, I play knight f5. Knight f5 is still playable here. Maybe not necessary. How to do this? I could take in knight f5. Yeah, I think I should take. But knight f5, take and then fork and then win back the thing. I guess I lose b6. Yeah, it should be better to take the queen immediately. And how to do this? Maybe rook b8. e5 is a move. Actually, rook b8, knight c6. Have a little bit of time here. Bishop d8. It looks weird, but I feel like the bishop can be improved. Preemptively defending b6. Yeah, the knight is kind of awkward here. I don't really want to play knight f5 and allow the trade. I have b5, take. Thinking knight f5, bishop f2. Alright, let's just play bishop c7. Someday I'll go for one of these breaks. Maybe rook d8 and d5. Okay, I should probably retreat the knight. f5 might be coming. So e5, take. Let's go for this first. I want to clamp down on the square. If f5, I play e5 and then get the knight to c6. And white doesn't play f. Okay, I was going to say I want to play g6 next. Yeah, this might be a little bit awkward, but I think it's still controlled. You might see knight c2 to e3 to eventually to d5. Kind of want to play g6, f6, and then knight f5. I might not be playing this in the best approach, but as long as I don't give white any tactics, I should be fine. I take this. Yeah, we'll trade down a little bit. Rook e6. Rook d8 first. Put the rook on d7. Anticipating rook df1. I have a few too many pawns on dark squares. This bishop is kind of hibernating. But it's doing its job, keeping things defended. Okay, if I take, the pawn comes to f6. I'll go for this. Some idea of taking and then rook to e6 and then bishop d8. And then try and corral the f6 pawn. I think I can go for it here. Like takes, rook e6, bishop h4, bishop d8. There's a rook check. Yeah, that should be fine. I could throw in e4. But I don't think there's any need. I think we'll see rook g1 to g7. And we might be trading f-pawn for h-pawn. But then my king will come to the center. Life should be good. And white still has some compensation, like the more active king. But white also has no time. I want to play e4 here. Takes. Let's just take. Oh, because if takes, I take with check. Yeah, now it should be very clean. F5. Just play this. There might be some mating idea. Like this, king d5 and then king d7. I'm threatening mate. And white either has to allow it or give the rook. Nice finish. Okay. So white's king actually walked a little bit too far into my territory. I think that was a nice game overall. Hopefully a nice example of playing the hedgehog from the black side. Yeah, Taimanov Taimanov is basically this setup, but there are cases like we saw in this game where it can lead into a hedgehog setup. And maybe I didn't describe this entirely clearly when I played it initially, but the hedgehog is basically where you put the pawns like this and then very often b6. And it kind of resembles the animal. That's just kind of, it's small, it's maybe not the most aggressive creature, but it's hard to attack. And it's good at counterattacking too, as we saw later in the middle game. So going forward, I think all of this was quite standard. The engine actually really favors white, especially after the move knight takes c6. Oh, maybe there's some tactics. Queen takes e6 and bishop f3, threatening e5. The skewer and the attack on the knight. This would force me to play e5, like the only move that doesn't lose material. And if white went for this, then it's actually a nice positional game because now white has good control over d5. Its bishop's not great. And yeah, e5 would be a major concession for black. So yeah, maybe I should have started with knight e5 and then b6. Engine says bishop to d7, which is also solid. My opponent did not exploit my move order. And then we got the very typical hedgehog position. And g4 is aggressive. Engine doesn't like this move. I think this is the first moment in the game where I took a decent amount of time before playing queen a8, which the engine also doesn't like. Engine says h6 is best, which I was scared to play because it allows white to play g5, and there's all this potential on the g file. But I guess after g5 takes, black is doing fine, knight g6. Engine says b5 here. Yeah, it could get very crazy. I have noticed with, especially analyzing hedgehog positions, the engine very often will criticize human play because it will find some very concrete lines which maybe aren't so natural. So I was trying to be flexible with queen 8. And yeah, when white pushed f4, yeah, I was very happy with this square because yeah, if white can play this and maybe get one more move like queen f2 to prevent knight h4, then maybe it would be okay for white. But knight h4 is just such a nice resource. And I mean, white played bishop d3, and this is really where I took over the game after winning e4. And yeah, I don't think white had any chances after this. So, okay, nice start to the episode, up to 2260. Let's keep it going. We'll do another. Okay, next opponent. I don't want to hurt myself pronouncing this name. And I'm going to play a London. There have been multiple viewers requesting the London in the YouTube comments. And I'm reaching the level where I do want to be more solid in the opening against these stronger players. And the London is still an opening that has some venom to it. A lot of players, even good players, will underestimate. Knight to d2 here. There might be potential for a reverse Cambridge Springs. Probably not in this case. I think I have to defend my b-pawn. Yeah, black's actually playing an interesting line. I'm going to take a moment here. Like, rook b1 is a natural move. There's also pawn takes pawn. And then if queen takes b2, I have rook b1, rook takes b7. Also, I'm not sure if people hear, but there's loud ambulance sounds outside the window. I did not ask to call an ambulance. Hopefully it's not for me. I really like the idea of this. Because if queen takes c5, then there's some c4 ideas, which maybe I can analyze after the game. But in this line, let's go for rook b1. And this is one of these lines which is not your typical London, because it's just getting very sharp and very tactical from early on. My queenside is maybe dissolving a little bit, but so is black's queenside. I could start with rook takes b7. There's also bishop takes b8, and then bishop b5 check. Not sure how effective that is. If I take on b7, then I'm hitting b8. Let's go for this. Black has no time to take on c5 because, yeah, the knight's attacked twice. See knight d7. Yeah, a very complex position. So bishop e5 is one of the first moves that come to mind. Black is maybe wanting to play e5 here. I don't think I can defend the pawn, unfortunately. I'm considering playing h3. Just try and provoke the bishop to move. The bishop h5, then, there's some cases where I can exploit the fact that d7 is less defended. I mean, there's bishop takes f3, queen takes f3, and then e5. Could get really tactical. I'm thinking I should start with this move because I'm threatening c6. I think black would have to take. And then I could castle, I could play h3. Yeah, let's start with bishop e5. I probably should have just played this move instantly. Just such a natural move. Pin the knight, prepare to castle. Black immediately responds with e5. So can I counterattack? This is one of the main points. And there's also taking, actually. Wait a minute, the knight's pinned. And if black takes, I take, and okay, it's a queen trade, but it's got to be really good for white. What is black planning to do? Bishop takes f3. I take the queen, and that should also be very good. Yeah, I think e5 was a little bit reckless. It may have already been bad for black. My pieces are now on such good squares. And yeah, we'll go into this line. I have 3 attackers against a knight. I could start by taking on d7. It's funny, black might want to castle next move, which is surprisingly legal. What's also funny is if I take on d7, black can still castle, even though I control b8 twice. Let's take a moment here. And maybe c6 in that case. Okay, so knight takes e7. I think the only move I'm scared about is castling. Oh, but then I have rook b8. King c7, I take, take. I'll be up a piece in the end. Yeah, let's go for this. And if black saves the bishop, I take the knight with discover double check. Black does castle. Yeah, what a funny move. So there's c6. There's rook b8. And there's so many ambulances outside. I'm sure the noise suppression filter is working though. So rook b8, king c7, take, and then I take one of the minor pieces. Anything better? Bishop a6. Let's just go for this. I'll take on f6, and then black will either save the bishop. Yeah, we'll probably see bishop takes c2, and then I'll take on d5. And I'm up a minor piece and a pawn. Now I'm threatening rook c1. The bishop and knight do a nice job of creating the wall in front of the king. Let's go for rook c1. Yeah, there might be some mating net ideas. Rook c7, take, back rank. And the other knight wants to get involved too. Bishop b2. I think the plan now is to play bishop c6 and then rook b8. And then maybe bring the other knight in. And probably start with knight c4. Bishop found one safe square. Now bishop c6. I'm spoiled for choice. Let's just try and put black out of their misery. Rook b8, bishop c8, knight e6. Using all my pieces. And the king can't really run or hide. Okay, that was a nice game. Hopefully goes to show the venom of the London opening. It was, natural play from black. They tried to play actively with bishop g4 and queen b6. And I can't say that I've encountered this exact move order too often, but I have been in similar types of situations. There's a more common line, knight c6, knight bd2, and then queen b6. And in this line, there's a lot of theory around pawn takes pawn, queen takes b2, rook b1, queen c3, bishop b5. But this, of course, is different to what happened in the game, because in the game, black's bishop was already committed to g4 and b7 was hanging. So I think what we got was just a better version for white. And the engine actually says that black should not take on b2 here. The better move is queen takes c5. And I still would have been happy with this. I think I was going to play c4 and then look to play rook c1. And again, not the most typical London, especially with the pawn coming here. But in this case, it would be justified given that black's queen is a target on c5. So yeah, if we just see what happened in the game, yeah, things just got bad for black really quickly. And e5 was not the best move, but according to the engine, black is already pretty much losing in this position. The best move would have been queen takes c5. And then, yeah, the engine says white can just castle. And it's hard for black to untangle. Just so much pressure. h3 is probably coming. And white's having all the fun. So, yeah, after e5, I don't think there's much more to analyze here. But kudos to my opponent for finding queenside castling. It did make me think a bit, but yeah, thankfully I was able to win the extra piece and then convert pretty seamlessly. So, up to 2268. Let's keep it going. We'll do another. Okay, next opponent, playing Z, P, H, etc. We'll play another Sicilian. Another Taimanov, perhaps. Been facing knight b5 a lot recently, at least in a couple games. Knight takes e6 is also playable. It's not the most venomous move, simply because it gives black some nice center. But this is still very fine for white. I mean, white's going to castle. Sometimes queen e2, f4 comes. I'm just going to play solid. Bishop e7. I don't mind if e5 happens. I'll play knight d7. White is building up on the king side. So I did have a similar type of position a few episodes ago. And was it the exact position? I don't think it was the exact position. There is a really interesting idea here. I mean, castling is probably playable. There's c5, there's knight c5, there's bishop c5, there's queen b6. But there's another move I'm really tempted to play, which is bishop a6. Simply to trade my worst minor piece for white's best minor piece. The bishop takes, there's queen b6. I think I'm just going to go for it. White can't really avoid the trade. Controlling all the squares on this diagonal. And if we can trade light squared bishops, then it's much harder for white to attack on the king side. And then I'll feel safer castling king side. King h1, I'll take. And now I'll castle. There's other lines where like this idea would not be possible because black commits to a6 earlier, but this is a very thematic idea to keep in mind in such Sicilian variations. And going forward, I'm feeling pretty comfortable. Like c5 now can probably be played very soon. I might end up playing g6 just to prevent white from breaking through on the f file. I could start with rook b8. I don't think it's worth playing knight c5. I'm going to start with c5. It's very possible white will go for rook ae1 and then try and prepare f5. Queen g3 makes sense. I still have to be careful. Because now f5, e5 is defended. Considering queen c7 here. Rook e8 is also a very typical move. I'm also realizing that f5 I take, then d5 is hanging. So what to do? Queen b8? Feels wrong. And there's f5 myself, and takes, and then either bishop or knight takes. But then still f5. And if I could play f5 and white doesn't en passant, I think that's good for me. Takes, bishop takes. f5. Maybe f5, d4. I'm actually a little bit uncomfortable here. 5 takes, bishop takes. Rook ae1. Queen b6, f5. I take with knight. I take with knight. Okay, so I'm looking at f5 takes, knight takes, rook ae1. And then something like queen d6 or queen d7. Oh, there's no queen e3 because I have d4. And if f5 I play d4, I'm going to play f5. I'm expecting white to en passant. And the plan's to take with the knight. And the game might revolve, I mean, it's probably going to revolve around the center, especially this e6 pawn. Whether or not white can get in this break. But f5 right away, I have d4, and the knight can't move to e4. Nice benefit of having my knight on f6. White plays f5 anyway. So bishop h6 is now possible. But then I have knight h5. But I think I want to start with d4. Okay, things are definitely heating up. I should note if bishop h6, rook f7, there's takes, and then I would be in big trouble. But I think after bishop h6, knight h5, I'm hitting the queen, I'm hitting the knight. That should be good for black. And if white plays knight e2, then maybe I just take. Oh, then I have knight e4, hitting the queen and rook, or queen, bishop, and pawn. So I unleash my rook. Yeah, so this is actually pretty concrete. And white has to figure out if there's a tactical solution here. And I'm not seeing it for white. Let's look at this again. Bishop h6, knight h5. Let's say queen g4. The problem for white, I take the knight, and if white takes my knight, I take the bishop. I don't think white has enough compensation, even with my exposed king. Yeah, maybe my opponent is realizing the danger here. Sometimes easy to miss a counter-attacking move like this. We do see knight e2, so yeah, knight e4 looks like the most promising. I think it wins a clean pawn. And the queen's going to have to move somewhere to defend the bishop. In all these cases, I take the bishop, queen will take back. I take on f5. Do I want to throw in this move? This is interesting, actually. Because if takes, I have knight f2. So the pawn is still probably a goner. But there's knight f4. Yeah, maybe it's, yeah, knight f4 is actually kind of annoying. This knight f4, queen f5. I think this is just simpler, though. Do I take with pawn or rook? Probably doesn't make a huge difference. Leaning towards pawn. This pawn should be pretty easy to defend. And the pawns on light squares will combine very well with the dark square bishop. Okay, so the pawn's attacked. Queen d5, knight f4. Queen d7. And g6 is queen c4. That's still mildly uncomfortable. I start with g6. I think I start with queen d7. And white's going to be poking and prodding. There's these moves improving. Rook d1, c3 might be playable. I think I should really play g6 at some point. Now is probably the time. I'm not sure if rook f3 was the most useful move there. White's maybe preparing the double up, but now f5 is really well defended. I'm down about a minute. Bishop f6. Simply improving. Probably want to look to use the e-file. Only fully open file in the position. Also, did I just blunder a pawn? I think I may have. But actually, after queen c4, queen f7, queen takes e5, rook c8. And I think I win back c2. So, some accidental tactics. And it's probably a good transformation for me. Skewering the queen and the c-pawn. I'll have a pass d-pawn if white goes for this line. And a7's defended from a distance. Yeah, that wasn't totally necessary. Like, if I saw the possibility of queen c4, I probably would have been way more hesitant to play bishop f6. But I am being rewarded for my pieces being on decent squares. Sometimes that just leads to more tactical possibilities. Okay, take the pawn. Attacking b2. Definitely want to keep an eye out for back rank mate ideas. Rook c8. Knight d5. Queen defends. Can I just take on b2? Don't see anything wrong with this. Always got to be careful with like the rook undefended in the opponent's territory. But a pawn is a pawn. Considering bishop d8. Guess there's queen c5. Maybe rook fb8. That looks pretty good. Although I lose a7. Yeah, the threat is to take and win a7. Bishop goes back. I think I want to hold on to the bishop. That way my queen's not overworked. Play rook e8. Preventing any knight e7 shenanigans. My pawns are defended. Queen is still tied down to defending the knight. I might be threatening some rook a2 trickery. This takes and I mate. Should keep in mind this X-ray vision. H3 might be coming soon. Wondering about rook e5 and then queen c8. What about bishop f8? Queen a5. And then rook e5. Does it win a knight? Oh, there's queen c1. Or queen d4, never mind. Okay, it looks like a passive move. I just have to move quicker. I don't want to get into one of these like heart-wrenching time scrambles. With this move, I think I'm now threatening rook e5. I'm guarding the back rank. And maybe I just want to play rook d8. My rooks are usually happy behind passed pawns. I'm up on time, so that's a good thing. I'll kick around the queen. Knight might be coming to d3. I go for the queen trade. G5. Just play this. Doubling on the E file. And this is not a mate threat because rook F1. H3 does come. Bishop E5. Knight E2 might be coming. Move the bishop back. Eh. Play this. Yeah, it's hard to make progress. White actually has a stable setup. But I'm stable too. Okay, I want to play G5 very soon. Everything's defending and attacking the d-pawn. The d-pawn is sufficiently defended. I'll bring my king in now. Probably f4 coming. How about this first? Oh, is there a trap? If takes, I move here and I pin and win. I gotta move much faster. Okay, win the a-pawn. And bishop's restricting the knight. Let's just simplify here. Can check again. Play this. I just gotta move quick. D2. Go for this idea. I'm up 3 pawns. I'm down a little bit of time. White's played very well to resist. Slowly but surely. No stalemate tricks. There we go. Plenty of time. That's not stalemate. I might be winning on time. Okay. I won on time. I was a little bit scared there because in the past there's been this weird like bug on chess.com where opponent shows to be flagging, but the move doesn't come through. But that was not the case there. So, okay, managed to win after a long endgame grind. Yeah, maybe my technique could have been much cleaner. Let's take it from the beginning. I think the opening was very solid. Yeah, I've noticed against lesser experienced players, knight takes e6 is for some reason a more common move. You don't see this too much at like the grandmaster level, just because it leads to this nice setup for black. And yeah, let's see what the engine thinks of bishop a6. It's not the first choice. but it's one of the choices. It's the fourth choice of the engine. I think it leads to just a simple position, forcing the trade of bishops. Engine actually prefers castling here. Also fine. And then going forward, yeah, c5 may have been a little bit too quick. Engine actually likes f5 here. I don't think I was even considering f5 in this position. Then later I play f5, but it's still fine for black. So takes. And then when white played f5, yeah, this just gave me a lot of initiative with d4 and then knight e4, able to win the pawn. Apparently I missed something stronger. I could have taken. Yeah, I was considering queen d5, but I don't think I actually considered this move. In hindsight, it looks really simple. Just capture the pawn, reinforce the knight. The knight should be better than the bishop. I think I was kind of in the mindset to simplify because I want a pawn. But white got some compensation. And then, yeah, I was fortunate to have this rook c8 move. And around here, I thought it would be a much easier win. Not sure if I missed anything. I do want to point out, like, I was close to playing rook b8 here, but this would allow takes and takes and takes. And this is not mating because white has rook f1. I've seen a lot of even like decently strong players make this mistake, thinking it's forced back rank mate, but yeah, rook f1 keeps white safe. And yeah, black still have a pawn, but this would be much harder to convert. So I think bishop g7 was fine. And then, yeah, kudos to my opponent. Like putting up so much resistance, creating the time scramble situation. And yeah, it just took a lot of patience on my end. I don't think I was ever in trouble in the position. Eventually was able to simplify and kept just enough time on the clock. So I think I'll end it here, up to 2275. Hope you guys enjoyed the games today. As usual, if you have questions, do leave them below. And I'll see you guys soon for another episode. Stay tuned.